Hello, Olympics and Paralympics fans, and welcome to Keep the Flame Alive's Games History Moment, where we look at past editions of the Games. All year long, we're looking at Chamonix 1924, which is billed as the first Winter Olympic Games and is celebrating its 100th anniversary in 2024. I am your host, Jill Jaracz, joined as always by my lovely co host, Alison Brown. Alison, hello, how are you?
I am fine, but no safety equipment is allowed on this show
Oh, okay. I
because
guess we'll find out why.
we are talking bobsledding. And
Oh.
let's just say bobsledding back in the day, not like bobsledding today.
We've read about that in Speed Kings for book club not that long ago. So this will be fun to hear about because it was crazy, crazy days.
So, as we read about in Speed Kings, the first bobsled races were run in 1898 in San Moritz, Switzerland. By 1924, the sport was still pretty new and not terribly well organized. The International Federation for Bobsleigh and Tobogganing, which was the federation at the time, was only organized in November 1923, which is only a few months before the Olympics, the Winter Olympics were going to start. So, according to the history section of the current federation, the International Bobsled and Skeleton Federation, bobsleigh races bobsleigh racers did not train and they did not practice. The sport was a favorite of, quote, rich adventurers who liked to gather at alpine resorts for weekends of competitions and partying.
So 100 years ago, they would be into bobsleigh. Today, they're in about going to space. Like these
Right.
these same people, right?
Right. I think these are more the playboy types as opposed to the I want to gain power and control the world types. I have a feeling there was a lot of bobsledding and champagne happening at the same time, which actually sounds like fun.
I could go for bobsledding and champagne myself.
But you know what? Again, safety equipment, do not drink and bobsled. So in Chamonix 1924, races ran over 2 days, February 2nd and 3rd, at the Piste de Bobsleigh des Pyrénées. Teams could either be 4 or 5 men, though only 2 of the 11 teams included 5 sledders, one from Belgium and one from Italy. 5 countries sent 2 teams each: Switzerland, Great Britain, Belgium, France, and Italy. Hungary also sent a team, supposedly, but they did not start. We don't know why they didn't start, but there are no bobsledders listed among the entrants from Hungary in the official records. So, what happened between when they left Hungary and arrived in France, we don't know. But Hungary did not have a sled as originally planned. Over 3,000 spectators watched the sleds careen down the track, 4 runs each. Total time determined the medalists. The course ran 1,370 meters with a 156-meter vertical drop and 19 curves. This should sound familiar. It's not so different than what we do now. Surprisingly, I was really surprised by how similar the track was then to what we do now. So, for example, the Beijing track was 1,376 meters, a vertical drop of 117 meters, and included 16 curves.
Huh. That's really interesting that that element of the sport hasn't changed so much.
What has changed is how we make these tracks. So, the track in Chamonix was carved into the natural snow using stones to build up the walls. So, you'd put the stones on, cover them with more snow to make the walls after you had carved it into the ice. They imported
I'm
Italian.
sorry. I'm so sorry. I just think of a bobsleigh just careening down the track and hitting these stone walls and just head injuries everywhere.
Yeah. So if you see the pictures after the Olympics and even modern pictures, you can still see the stones piled up along the sides, like a New England wall at the edge of a farm. And they have held up because Italian masons were imported to
Oh,
build these
really?
tracks.
Oh, well, you got the good guys.
You got the good stonemasons coming in making these things. So the walls of modern bobsled tracks can reach 20 feet. We don't have measurements of what Chamonix measured on the side. But when you look at the pictures, sometimes it looks like they're 2 feet high. Sometimes it looks like they're 5 feet high. Sometimes it looks like they're maybe 10. So it seems like the track was very inconsistent along its length. It all depends on whether the person is standing in the track for the picture. And there's a
Oh,
lot of
okay.
pictures of people standing on the track.
I wonder if it was just a race, who could build the highest section of wall?
Giovanni and Giuseppe were yelling at each other, saying, "I can put more stones on my side than you can." And then Pietro would come in and throw a snowball at somebody and just mess everything up. So here, in another quaint little twist, sleds and riders were towed to the top of the course by a horse. And in one photo, there's a dog running alongside the sled with the racer sitting on the sled. So this was a pretty casual affair.
It's like the track dog, how could you not have one?
Of course, there was a track dog. There actually, in a lot of pictures of Chamonix, there are dogs, which I'm totally here for. The Chamonards really do like their dogs and want them as part of their winter sports.
Very nice.
So fans and officials were very close and sometimes directly on the track during the races. If you look at the photographs and the very grainy film, the officials stand on the track. One of the reasons they stand on the track is to stop the sled at the end of the run. So at the very end of the run, they made it a rocky surface. Sometimes that wasn't enough. So officials would grab the sled to stop it if it just kept going.
They needed one of those little runs like I saw at the, Salt Lake City track that has never been used, but they had a little pull-off point that you could just keep going and going until you slowed down. It sounded like they needed that too, because they did not figure out that do these sleds not have brakes?
They did not have brakes. They needed a net, they needed a crash pad, they needed a lot of things on this track that they did not have.
I'm guessing we have no statistics on how many shoulders were ripped out of sockets trying to stop sleds.
We do not. We do have statistics on crashes, and we're gonna get to that.
Gosh.
But the sleds themselves were open frames with steering wheels or ropes, and that's all you had to control it. There's no helmets, there's no special suits. The riders wore sweaters and woolly hats and hoped for the best. So the favorite going into the event was Swiss driver Charlie Stoffel and his sled nicknamed Kismet. Stoffel was also an accomplished equestrian and competed in eventing in the 1924 and 1928 Summer Olympics. Several bobsledders competed in other sports, even multiple events in Chamonix. Two of the riders in the Belgian sled also competed on the ice hockey team, and Frenchman Georges Andres won a bronze in curling.
Whoa! This really sounds like, "Oh, I am a gentleman, I have many interests and many pursuits. We go in winter in St. Moritz, there's a lot of activity going on. Of course, you just do pickup games," and they happen to be the Olympic
Oh,
ones.
just wait.
Oh,
I have
no.
some
Wow,
gentleman
there's more.
stories.
Oh, yes.
So on the first run, Kismet crashed hard and Stoffel could not continue. Three other sleds crashed on the first day of competition. The other Swiss driver, Edward Scherer, had entered the Swiss qualifying event on a lark on a sled nicknamed Acrobat that he had won in a raffle.
That is upwards of the meat raffles I have seen around here.
I won a bobsled. Okay, let's go compete in the Olympics. Why not? Scherer, along with Alfred Neveu and brothers Alfred and Henrik Schlappi, led the first three runs by a considerable margin and won the gold medal by over 3 seconds on his raffled sled. This was the first of 31 Olympic medals in bobsled for Switzerland. So there was
Interesting.
also a Great Britain one sled with 4 British soldiers. They won the final run, but they were too far behind to overtake the Swiss sled, and they won silver. Belgium won with 5 riders, including the 2 hockey players, finished third on all 4 runs, winning bronze. The bronze medalists were 14 seconds behind the silver medalists, but they were more than 20 seconds faster than the 4th place finisher, one of the sleds from France. Can you
20
imagine
seconds.
20 seconds between finishers in a bobsled race now? Now it's hundredths of a second.
It'd be impressive if there were 20 seconds between first and last place.
So, speaking of that fourth place finisher, the French sled included the most interesting man in the world that was in this competition. Marie Quenan Felix Ghislaine Falqua Jean de la Croix Hérode de Suarez Dolan, thankfully known as Jean Marquis de Suarez Dolan.
Wow. That is a name. That is a name that parents could not agree on names to name their child, so they just picked them all.
And to no surprise, along with the title, he had inherited a considerable fortune, making him one of the wealthiest men in Europe. So he was big on the Champagne bobsled circuit. He was also a champion swimmer and diver. He twice raced at Le Mans. He flew in air rallies across Europe and North Africa and competed in bobsled in 3 Olympics, though he never finished higher than the 4th place he earned at Chamonix. Oh, I'm not done with Jean. During the German occupation of France in World War II, the Marquis used his position as president of the Society of the Wines of Champagne to hide weapons for the resistance in his wine cellars.
Ooh.
He escaped to North Africa and became a renowned fighter pilot. He was killed when his plane was shot down in October of 1944, and the Marquis was posthumously awarded the Military Cross and appointed Chevalier of the Legion of Honor. Oh, we're not done with
Wow.
interesting people in this competition. So we've got two more World War II connections. The first one comes from the Italian sled that finished 6th, last among the sleds that competed all 4 runs. After the Olympics, Louis Trenker became an actor, starring in the 1926 film The Holy Mountain, alongside a young German actress by the name of Leni Riefenstahl. Trenker resisted attempts to co opt his work in support of the Italian fascists, and he made an enemy of Joseph Goebbels. He
That
managed
oh, I was gonna say that is not something you wanna do.
he managed to survive the war, though, and he became a successful documentary filmmaker. And he died in 1990 at the age of 97.
Wow.
Gerald Fairley, who finished 5th in the second Great Britain sled, sent his results while he was in Chamonix and other results and reports back to the UK that were published in the Times, and he became a full-time reporter after the Olympics. Fairley worked as a war correspondent in France during World War II. He was captured by the Germans, but he escaped and returned to France as an intelligence officer. He was twice awarded by France one of their highest honors, the Croix de Guerre, and he too became a filmmaker and also an author after the war, most famous for his private detective character, Bulldog Drummond. I love all these stories of what happened to these people after the Olympics because so many of them were kind of wealthy, kind of adventurers, doing all these interesting things. And so many of them were soldiers or became soldiers. And of course, you've got France, you've got Germany, you've got the UK, you've got these countries who were so involved and doing these wild things. And then, oh yeah, I just became a filmmaker and created this famous private eye.
It is mind-blowing and also impressive and inspirational at how people can reinvent themselves in a way or keep doing new things and achieving great things in many, many tasks or many occupations. And I realized that they had money and means, and that helps a whole lot, but it is one of those like, "Oh, Olympian, well, of course. Look at all
Of
these other
course,
cool things."
of course he was an Olympian who drank champagne and ran bobsleds.
I honestly think that the Lake Placid bobsled experience should just offer the champagne run. It sounds fantastic.
And speaking of Lake Placid, you may have noticed I did not mention the United States as among the competitors in bobsled.
Yes.
They did not compete.
Really?
They did not make that mistake again. The United States team did not send a team to Chamonix, but they did send a team to San Moritz in 1928 that won. And the United States would medal in bobsled in every Winter Olympics through 1956. So they may have
Wow.
missed the first, but they got with the program. And we talked about Speed Kings. That was one of the big ones.
Interesting. Interesting.
So
Oh,
references, Olympics.com, Olympedia, IBSF, NBC.com, The Guardian, France Bleu, Britannica, and Olymstats.
all right. Well, wild times back in Chamonix when you're daredevils on the bobsled track. We have one more month of Chamonix, so we'll be back again next month with one last story. If you do want to know about the early days of bobsled, do check out our book club episode on Speed Kings, which is about those days. And that one looks more at the Lake Placid 1932 Olympic competition, but again, still wild, wild times in the sport. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, keep the flame alive.